Awesome. Thank you, Alex. And welcome everyone to Mastering PMM Skills. I'm so excited to be with you here and this amazing panel. To start it off, I am Jeffrey Vocell, Head of Product Marketing at Panorama Education. Been in product marketing now for a long, long time. As I mentioned, super excited to have this panel. I'm going to start and let them introduce themselves, but I'm going to start with a question to get us rolling. So you can add this question to your intro. And Eve, I will start with you as kind of a fun icebreaker. If you could market any product from history, curious what it would be and why.
I love this question so much. It's hard to pick just one. Hey, everybody. My name's Eve Alexander. I lead product marketing for Seismic. And if I really just had to pick one, I'm a big fan of working on products that have good product market fit. And the challenge is, how do you scale? And I'm also a big fan of craft beers. So I would pick Sierra Nevada Pale Ale circa the 1980s, when people are starting to get into craft beer. But the challenge is, how do you educate the market on this new style of very delicious beverage? I think that there's just a lot of fun stuff to do from a 4Ps perspective with product and promotion and distribution. So I think that that would be really fun.
Awesome. What a time that would be to markets, in my opinion, amazing beer during the kind of hockey stick growth period as well. Kat, I will pop the question over to you to introduce yourself and a product that you would market from history.
Heck yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. My name is Catlyn Origitano. Everyone calls me Kat. I am the VP of Product and Portfolio Marketing at Fivetran. We move data, if you're not familiar with us. So I have the pleasure of running product marketing, and then portfolio includes partner, customer, content, and communications, and love figuring out how to weave all those things together. So this is my background, ties into my answer. So before I got into tech and marketing, I was an academic. So I have a PhD in philosophy, and I thought that's what I was going to be, was a philosophy teacher. Did that for a little bit. And so as a result, I would like to go back into time and market the Library of Alexandria. I have a firm belief that it would not have been burnt to the ground with a little bit better marketing. It was a little too niche, I think, appeal. And if it had a broader kind of understanding of the importance of it, and if it was marketed in the right way to different personas, I really think we could have saved a couple of thousand years of human history with some better marketing there.
Love that one. What a time. Eric, how about yourself? Curious if you could just briefly introduce yourself and a product that you would love to market from history.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for Sherbert and Jeff for having us here. So I'm Eric Bensley. I lead the product marketing group at Asana, which is a work management platform. My answer is kind of embarrassing. I've been in B2B marketing almost my entire career, and so I think the one thing that I crave a little bit of is more humor, and it's something from a personal side I obviously love to play around with. But when you think about your sort of target persona, I've always wanted to work in sort of a consumer brand where you get to almost poke fun at your consumer, like your persona, if that makes sense. So Dollar Shave Club, really loved kind of how they came on the market. They're, as a male myself, the persona that I'm able to make fun of the most is that. So, probably Dollar Shave Club, Old Spice as well, when they kind of came out. But yeah, that's just more an area we don't get to play as much with in B2B marketing that I would love to explore more.
For sure, for sure. Hopefully can incorporate it into product marketing, but totally agree. And Eric, maybe we can start with you and just jump right into some skills specifically.
Yeah.
Curious, what are some of the most valuable skills from your perspective for product marketers, maybe like top 3 or 5 if you want to go, and how have you developed some of them yourself or coached your team on developing some of them?
Yeah, totally. I think the most valuable skill is communication and how an individual can take bigger concepts and distill them down. I think there's a lot of different kind of ways to build that skill. I'll talk about more skills, but that one to me always is number one. I think writing is always a great avenue to hone in the skill of communication. I think it's the one place where we can make multiple cycles and get something to a shorter, more pointed place. As product marketers, see that in all the assets that we create, whether it's websites or documentation or pretty much any asset we put together, the film scripts, anything like that, can really hone that message in. But I think where I see strong product marketers stand out is sort of that extra mile, taking something from 90% good to 95, 96, 97%. That investment, I think, is something that other functions don't take that extra time to do. And so honing in communications, making sure things resonate, making sure they fit in the broader kind of environment that they're going to land with your competitors with. So that muscle, I think, there's never an end state to that. And so I think just continuing to sort of hone that muscle is really important. I enjoy writing personally as well, which I tell people if they do want to hone it in, that is a great way to do it. I would say the other thing is just the ability to adapt. We have so many stakeholders as product marketers, and I think one of the things that sets good product marketers apart from the rest, to me, is their ability to adapt to very complex and dynamic situations. We have a lot of stakeholders with different viewpoints. We have customers, and there isn't typically a right answer to what we do, which is what makes it challenging. And so the ability to sort of thrive in that environment with constant change and sort of rise to the occasion, that's more of an intangible, but I think you start to see it when people work in these dynamic kind of team situations and how they rise to the occasion. It's not for everybody, but it's definitely something. So I'll leave it at 2 for now and let the rest of the folks kind of jump in here too.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. And real quick before we pass it along to Kat and Eve, we did get a question from the audience I think we can fairly quickly cover, which is, would you suggest any courses or tools to improve writing?
Courses or tools? I don't think I have any courses or tools. I think what I would say is publishing what you do to go beyond just reading. I spent a lot of my life journaling and writing and only looking at it myself. I think the big pivot for me was when I started showing it to broader groups of people. And it doesn't have to be about your work. It can be about your passion areas, put up a blog, go on LinkedIn. It's a very humbling experience, but it also sort of teaches you what's resonating, what's not, and gets you kind of out of your head. And I think it's a hack to like getting to better writing, is trying to get folks to engage with your content.
Completely agree.
I would add too, this isn't writing directly, but in the topic of communication skills, like writing presentations is also really important. Some of you may be familiar with Duarte. It's a firm that helps design presentations, executive presentations, but they also have some courses as well as some books on how do you do storytelling through presentations. So I'd recommend that.
That's a great suggestion, Eve. And curious for your perspective on product marketing skills, maybe top few product marketing skills that have been most valuable for you or your team.
Yeah, I mean, I think navigating ambiguity, like Eric said, the ability to adapt, super important. Also, communication, probably number one. But what comes to mind for me is the ability to influence without authority. That is, like, we aren't necessarily leading or managing huge teams. We have to really influence the decision makers, whether it's product or sales or the CMO or CEO. And I think a few ways to do that. One is, as product marketers, we have to know our product and we have to know our customers. Like, those are the two, I would say, things that if we do nothing else, prioritizing, having that deep knowledge. When I first started at Seismic, we did these Friday afternoon sessions where the team would dive into the product and get hands-on with it. I benefit because our platform also has the ability to listen to call recordings and see what's going on in those. That's a great way to do it. But even better if you can actually be a presenter on those customer calls and know your angle. Do you know the product really well? Can you speak to the roadmap? Or do you know the industry really well? Can you be that subject matter expert? So I think having that basically data, even if it's not quant, it can be qualitative, can really help you come to the table with a strong and powerful point of view. And then I think the other piece of that, I would say, is relationship building and making sure that you've got a strong board of directors, if you will, the people that you can call up in different parts of the organization who can give you quick feedback. And also, as part of that relationship building, dealing with conflict directly. One of my memories, I coach my team on this now, but when I was early in my career, I got advice from a boss, and I was like trying to get help navigating an interpersonal challenge. And he's like, I can solve this for you, or you can go and have this conversation directly. And it actually resulted in like really strong working relationship with that person. So I would just advocate for leaning into those relationships, even when it can sometimes be uncomfortable.
That's such great advice, and I'm sure it's served you well in your career since that point as well. So it's always great to take that step. Kat, how about yourself? Any additional product marketing skills? Any of these existing product marketing skills that Eric and Eve leaned on that you want to double down on?
I agree with all of them, right? Like, I would fully support and look for folks who are really good at those. So I think I would just add two things that like I really care about and I really value alongside of what's just been called out. So the first is, and I actually like wrote this for my team last year, and we had like an offsite and we discussed like, who do we need to uniquely be? Because I think in a lot of different companies at different sizes, product marketing needs to be a lot of different things. At Fivetran, when I first started, we were a team of 2, and now we're over 20 people. And so like, what skill you need and who you need to be as a team looks very different at different stages. And so that's where I think a lot of what you've all described about flexibility and communication is like wildly important, regardless of the stage. One of the things I've kind of been encouraging my team is the phrase is to be the wisest person in the room. And like, why wisdom in particular? So if anybody here likes Dungeons and Dragons, I play regularly. There's these different stats that you can get into. You can be charismatic or intelligent or wisdom, right? You can have all these different things. And so wisdom in Dungeons and Dragons, people with high wisdom are people who know the right thing to do in a given situation. And I think that is what I think is really important, because if you show up in a room and you understand what's going on in the industry and what's going on with the customer, right? And so when you're asked your opinion, it's like knowing the right thing in that situation. Or the other one, right, I think a lot of people know is like the knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. And I think that's like kind of the role of product marketing is like, oh yeah, I get that. Like timeout, technically, I understand, but like that actually doesn't fit in this context in this way. And I see that as like a unique skill of product marketing within like a larger organization. And then the last, like my second one, which is I actually think one of the most important skills is being a good project manager. because product marketing is often the connective tissue between so many different teams, and we're leading things like product launches or messaging research or whatever it might be, bringing everybody along in a way that's like super clear. I just find that then helps the outcome and your execution becomes so much smoother if you're a really great project manager. So that's something I definitely look for, is how organized and communicative you are in your project management skills.
That is an incredible analogy. I personally have never heard it, but it fits so well with everything product marketers do on a day in and day out basis. And I think all of you really talked about the importance of working cross-functionally and to a large extent. And I think that's where a lot of the skills that's product marketers and product marketing leaders develop throughout the course of their career need to lean. So I want to kind of lean in on that aspect to a little bit with this next question, which is, how do you kind of effectively collaborate with other departments, such as, you know, sales as an example, or product, and kind of build that into a cohesive marketing strategy? Kat, I can start with you.
Okay, sounds good. So this is going to sound a little bit like a cop-out answer, but then I will give specifics so it's less of a cop-out. It depends is going to be the way I start off the answer. And the reason why it depends is because, and I'm just going to speak from my experience, it depends on the stage of the company, the size of the company, and what you're doing. So when I first started at Fivetran, as an example, the ways in which we coordinated across product, our SEs, our sales engineers, and our solution architects, and our AEs, was we created pods that would function around particular use cases. So for instance, one of the early reasons a lot of folks would buy Fivetran was to do analytics. So you need all these data pipelines pulling data into your warehouse, right into your BI tool. So we created pods around these different analytic use cases that had a PMM and a PM as kind of the co-GM. And then it was surrounded by all of these different folks. And every quarter, they shared a metric, they shared a roadmap. And that was really successful when we were able to maintain like a one-to-one relationship between PM and PMM. Well, 4 years later, you can imagine that process and that way of coordinating doesn't work anymore. So we are like right now actively rebuilding a whole new go-to-market process with product, our enablement team, our sales team. And so part of it is like changing it every well, not every year, hopefully, but it depends on how much your growth is, and reevaluating your processes and not treating any like sacred cows. And when you build that process, bringing all those people together into it. So for instance, right now we're building out a process where before we get into development, we do a PR FAQ where we write, you know, what would the PR be for these? What would be the FAQs? As the product gets built, we're doing our naming research, we're doing our messaging and positioning, and we have more milestones where we're bringing all these folks along. So that's what I was going to say. It depends. It has looked different when the team and the company needed different things. And that's kind of been how we've tackled it, is the process and the solution is always done together, as opposed to one team just like telling another team what to do. I'll let you know how the new process goes once it's up and live, and right now we're in the cat herding phase of all of it. So I'll let you know.
That's awesome. And totally agree that every so often we absolutely need to, you know, think about and revise our GTM process based off the market as well. Real quick, I want to kick this question over to Eric and Eve as well. But before I do, just a reminder for everyone here, please add your questions to the Q&A. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to make sure we're answering your questions and helping you all out excel in your careers or your day-to-day challenges as a PMM, or maybe jumping into PMM, or whatever the case may be. We'd love to help you kind of master those PMM skills. So please enter your questions in the Q&A panel in Zoom. With that being said, Eve, will pop the same question over to you.
I mean, Kat said it. It depends. But I'll try to add on to it a little bit too. The product marketing team at Seismic is also, sounds like, about the same size as Fivetran. It's about 20 people. And so I wouldn't recommend what I'm about to say for a team of 5, but we've organized ourselves functionally. So there's a team within product marketing that's aligned to our different product areas, and their primary internal stakeholder is the product organization, and they're part of it. We don't call them pods, we call them quads, but it's it's PM, PMM, engineering, and design, and then of course there are other team members that are involved too. And they're really focused on, to borrow a term from a colleague, building the Lego pieces. So we're a multi-product company, but how do we build the go-to-market strategy, the messaging, the positioning, the content for these different product areas? And then we have another team who is oriented around our different audiences, our segments, and our industries. And their primary internal stakeholders are sales, customer success, marketing, and they're working on how do we take these Lego pieces and contextualize them for the different audiences that we're going after. And they partner really closely to create campaigns to generate pipeline. And so while that doesn't mean that the folks that are aligned to our product areas shouldn't have relationships with marketers or with sales, and that the folks aligned to our audiences shouldn't also, know about the different products, we have people that are quarterbacking different aspects of kind of inbound and outbound, and that allows us to focus the relationships and to lean on each other and our expertise versus having to be completely jack of all trades and have relationships in every pocket of the organization. So that's one of the things that we do.
Amazing, and love the idea of the quad. And I know as I was previously at HubSpot, and our team structure was very, very similar to what you just mentioned, Eve, as well. Eric, how about yourself? How do you think about collaborating cross-functionally and ensuring that you kind of bring everyone together for a cohesive strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, what Eve said resonates a lot with kind of my experience as well. I think as a product marketing leader, I always kind of talk about you have 3 bosses. You have the CMO, you have your head of revenue and CS, if those are together, CRO, and then you have your head of product. And on any given day, you'll be working for one of those bosses more than others. And you have to sort of flex that mindset. And so when I think about the relationships to me are based on shared KPIs and ongoing and consistent communication. Those are the 2 things that I think build great relationships internally. I think if we look at sort of the sales relationship as different from the product relationship, the sales relationship is much more metrics driven, right? And that's where you sort of have to have that credibility on pipeline, ARR, ACV, whatever your metrics are around revenue, but consistent updates and consistent sort of oversight of the business to build that relationship and be a true partner to anyone in revenue. The creativity and what you're doing from a campaigns perspective or new product introduction is interesting, but only in service of those higher numbers and never for purely creative reasons, right? So you kind of have to flex. And I think different PMMs lend themselves to that disposition better than others, right? And then when I think about the product relationship, it's not the inverse, but it is a little bit of like a flip on the sort of metrics versus creativity or communication. So with product, I think the relationship is much more a collaborative and creative exercise where the partnership is really based on introducing new messages, setting vision for the category, those types of things. The metrics are very important, but they are not sort of the top line thinking usually of the product head of product. It's usually more about how are we progressing our narrative, how are we thinking about our competitive differentiation. And so again, like the profiles are a little bit different in those roles in my mind. And I think if you were to ask any PMM, they would say, hey, I'm more of one than the other. but they're honestly like equally important. And the relationship is based on sort of having the right mindset to build those relationships. So.
Absolutely. These are all incredible answers, and hopefully everyone is taking notes or at least learning a ton here. I want to move to just a quick lightning round. It's really just going to be kind of a single question for you all, and it's partially going to blend in some of these audience questions so we can get fully to the audience questions right after this. But Eric, I'll start with you. Are there any specific skills that you see as necessary for transitioning into product marketing or to more senior product marketing roles? Anything specific you advise your team on, or maybe you've received advice on?
Yeah, I think I'll answer that with just like sort of the behavior that I look for that type of thing, which maybe is more helpful than skill sets. I just look for more, you could call it like proactive problem solving. What I usually say is like answer questions that no one's asking. That's usually how I say it. That's to me a clear signal. I actually wrote something on this on like how to show your leader that you're a leader on my LinkedIn, but the key to it is sort of surprising your leadership team by coming with a perspective or doing your homework on something you weren't asked to think about. I think most individual contributors do the work that is assigned to them. I think most leaders think beyond what's assigned to them and think, how can we do this better? How does this connect to something else? And you'd be surprised how infrequently somebody comes to me and says, hey, we're struggling with this in the business. Have we thought about that? Right? Like that type of thinking to me is an immediately makes me think that somebody has a leadership mindset versus sort of a kind of do my job mindset. So I think that's the one. Like, what are the problems? How can you think bigger about your work, and how can you take a proactive stance on that to show the people around you that you actually have a leadership mindset?
Love that. Kat, how about yourself? What do you think about product marketing skills to either get into or maybe possibly grow more senior in product marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I would to Jillian agree with Eric that like for me the difference between like someone who's even senior to lead and like is you've seen a problem and you tell me and you solve it or have some ideas. Absolutely. If I get so much joy when my team tells me things that they see and find and already have ideas for. Couldn't be more excited. I think if you're getting into it and like wanting to get, like kind of move your way up, I do think some of the things we've talked about where it's like, even let's take something like communication as like its own little ladder. And it's like, cool, you were good at blog posts, you're good at some documentation. I think like for me, the ultimate, like you're really good is when you create a slide deck for like, we have like analyst relations, for instance, these kind of like you're telling your message to the industry in 4 slides that the CEO presents. Like if you're doing, it can start with these types of like one-sheeters, emails, yes. And as you work on the different mediums by which you communicate, I think that's, those kind of skill sets. When I see folks at the top, I know this sounds so, I don't know, like random, but if you put together a good deck, that is such a unique skill set, I think, in this day and age, and really it sets like a big distinguisher, in my opinion, between folks who are like, good communicators to like excellent communicators, especially in the PMM field. So I'm going to agree with Eric, and then I'm going to say a good pitch deck just really is the sign of leadership to me.
Love that. Eve, how about yourself? Do you, any other skills or want to echo any of the ones that are already mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are, I could not agree more with both of you. To offer a kind of different side of things, I would also say expectation management, expectation setting, and the ability to think more broadly just beyond yourself and your ability to deliver. So what I mean by that is aligning on what success looks like, or, you know, for me, that's aligning with the three bosses that Eric talked about, plus the CEO, plus the CFO, on what the charter of product marketing looks like. But I think how that relates to people that are maybe moving from a PMM to a senior PMM or to a director, it's think about how to manage my expectations, and think about that's not only just sometimes saying no when you need to say no, but it's how can we negotiate the timeline? Are there other resources and other pockets of the organization that we could tap? Or is there an external like contractor that we could bring in to help? Or could we rescope this ask in such a way that allows us to deliver 20% of what you asked for, but 80% of the impact? Like, that's what I'm looking for from the people that I'm working with, and that are showing me that they're ready to take on the next level, is that they're managing and they're helping set expectations, and they're looking for ways to be successful, even if it's not delivering on exactly the ask that came in.
Love that. Those are all super valuable skills, and hopefully everyone in the audience found at least one or two that they can apply in their day-to-day work going forward. So I want to shift gears a little bit and make sure we have plenty of time to answer questions from the audience. I'm going to start with this first one, which is, are some personality types better suited to the PMM role? For instance, what types do you suggest for an introvert with a marketing background?
Everyone's welcome and can be successful in product marketing. Like, come on in, the water's warm, is what I would say. I do think, to Eric's point, that different people and people from different backgrounds, like I saw one person asking about coming in from sales, for example. Like, you're going to bring a different set of skills and strengths, and those might lend themselves better to different roles within product marketing. Again, if you're on a product marketing team that's more than five-ish people, and there's a little bit of specialization. Like, if you're a good storyteller, and chances are if you're in sales, you're probably a good storyteller, like maybe one of those audience marketing, segment, industry marketing style roles might be a better fit for that strength. Some people are really strategic. Maybe they're coming from a consulting background, or just got done with business school or something. That can be really good for like competitive intelligence or pricing and packaging. Some people are phenomenal at galvanizing and leading teams. You should be leading product launches. You should be driving enablement and like helping the sales team and the rest of the field organization translate the vision into practical reality. So no, all personality types are successful here, in my opinion.
I would agree, but I would like to add potentially a spicy take, and I want to Eve and Eric. I want to hear, well, and also Jeff, you're a PMM. I want your background too, your feedback too. I agree very much with that. But I do think you have got to be okay talking to people. Even if it is customer interviewing, right? Like there is such a people element to product marketing. It's not, if you just don't want to speak with anybody, which is like super, I get that. This might not be the perfect field for you, because I'll just be honest, there is a lot. Like I think when we hear about, like when I describe PMM, I'm always like, it's the connective tissue between all these different teams. So if you're like, I'm not really into meetings, I'm not really into interviewing people, I'm not like, this might not be the perfect role for you. I think to Eve's point, like there is some specialization that folks can get into, but I just don't want to set someone up for success and they think that that's just not going to be the thing. And I guess the other part is, it doesn't mean you can't be a successful PMM. I will say there's not a lot of PMM leaders, people farther in their career, that aren't good presenters, like, I don't know what, because part of it is not only with internally, but like the amount of public speaking you do on webinars for your company and at events. So there's definitely, I just want to acknowledge like a bias for folks who are more comfortable speaking, publicly and talking to others. I will say there are many of us who appear to be extroverts, but are in fact super introverted and are quiet when they are not speaking to anybody else. And so it's not as if only extroverts can thrive, but you do need to figure out ways to bring that extroversion out, even in, I'll say with Eve, like conflict management. Like that is not something that, I think folks are really comfortable with immediately if you are more introverted. And so I want to give a little shout out to some therapy. Like it's helped me, on a weekly basis. I talk about a lot of the conflicts that I have with how to work on things that I don't feel comfortable with when it comes to people interaction. So it's not that you can't tackle them, but they are things to be tackled if it's not your immediate comfort zone. So I just wanted to kind of call that out. Is that fair, Eve? Like, I don't want to dunk on your me. Okay.
No, I think that's spot on. And I'm a fellow introvert who can turn it on and deliver when I need to. And so, you're looking at least 2 out of 4 who are calling themselves introverts and who are successful in product marketing, but you're spot on. You got to at least be willing to interact with people a lot. And if that's not your happy place, you're probably not going to love product marketing for sure.
Totally agree. And as somebody who also is the same way, is an introvert, but can kind of turn that on. I completely agree as well. We have a lot of questions, so I'm gonna jump to another question. We kind of talked maybe a teeny bit about this throughout the course of some of the earlier questions as well, but question is, how do you think PMM responsibilities and priorities, and I'm going to add and skills to the question, change from a 2-person marketing team to a 20-person marketing team? And that can be either overall marketing or even product marketing specific. Eric, can we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had the good fortune of managing both of those size teams. I think this one's specifically around the broader marketing team versus the PMM team, it looks like, yeah. 2 people in marketing to 20 people in marketing.
Yeah, the question is phrased specifically around marketing, but I think you can also answer product marketing specifically as well too.
Yeah, I mean, I think with smaller teams, your roles are super generic, and you flex to where the business is at any given point. That's been my experience. You don't have as much specialization. People need to be utility players that can, do sales enablement one day and then work on a press release the next. And that's actually how I learned product marketing, is being the only product marketer on a product for many years. This was like right out of college. That's how I sort of learned all the skills. So I think that's super valuable. And I think like what you look for in a team, like responsibilities and like priorities, is just somebody who can be a utility player, kind of flex into whatever's going on. I think as you get to sort of a larger team, you have to be more intentional about the skill sets and how you're prioritizing, because you can't flex as easily. If you're going to put a couple people with a certain focus, that can't change in a month unless you want to have major attrition within your organization. So I think in the beginning, it's sort of like your ability to flex and adapt, and put out a high output of work. I think as the team grows, specialization becomes more important. And I think if this question is getting at what do you do when your team's getting a little bit bigger, I think it's about getting alignment with your stakeholders on your priorities so that you don't send people down the wrong path. Because as a leader, I think that's your responsibility, is to make sure that your team is aligned to the priorities of the business to the best of your ability. Companies change, often even big ones. But I think it's much more about priorities and prioritizing time, setting teams up for success as the team gets bigger.
Seeing lots of nods, and completely agree with you there, Eric. Jumping to another question here. There are a fair amount of questions around how do I jump into product marketing, and so I'll try to summarize a number of them in one question. But what are some of those key skills, whether you're jumping from account management, sales, maybe product, et cetera, into product marketing that you all look for? Eve, I can start with you there.
Well, I think we've talked a lot about the soft skills. I think somebody even mentioned that there's a lot of focus on the soft skills, and what about the hard skills? I do think the hard skills are important as well. And I've helped a handful of people transition into product marketing from other parts of the organization, SDRs, marketing, SEs. And what I would recommend you start doing is shadowing or taking on project work. Eric, you were talking a lot about writing and blogs. That is if there's a new product area, or if there's a persona, like, do some blog posts about that. Get involved in a product launch and shadow a PMM who's leading that work, and maybe you can contribute to some of the content development based on maybe messaging that they've created. But I think that even more than like getting certified or taking like classes, if you can show some actual projects that you've worked on and contributed to, that would make me pay attention to you as a candidate wanting to transition.
That's a great one. Kat or Eric, anything you wanted to add to that? No? Awesome. Perfect. There's a question here about, and I think this relates to skills because it relates to cross-functional alignment, but maybe you can get a little bit specific here around how you build that relationship with product. Of course, product, it goes without saying, is a critical stakeholder for product marketing. But this question alludes to there being some division between product and product marketing, specifically around the roadmap. And so curious if you can talk about how do you build that relationship a little bit? How do you maybe kind of agree on some of those core roles and responsibilities areas and some of those outputs? And Kat, do you mind if I start with you?
I do not mind, Jeff. It's a good question. I don't have a rubric on how to do it in like a fail safe, always successful, never falters way. It's interesting too, as I'm reflecting on how to answer this, we just recently brought on a new CPO about a month ago. And so I'm like, how am I going to go build new relations? Like, what a question for me right now. And so very frankly, right, like I'll just, he started and we had, a little brief one-on-one, gave him a rundown of the team. And then I was also like, I'm going to give you a minute because you have a lot, going on. And, we are a pretty remote team, but we do have an office in Oakland. So I'm going to go spend an hour with him next week and we're going to start, digging into some things. And my approach, honestly, it's not too different to product as it is with everyone else. So I'm going to approach with kindness and candor, where I'm like, hey, so like, let's be real about where our, challenges are that we need to fix. Let's be real about how do you want to communicate with each other? I've had product folks who just love to, blast some feedback via Slack, or sometimes that doesn't always work. So part of it is just understanding like how to best work and align with each other. And so I'm still figuring that out with my new CPO right now. I'm excited to do that. A lot of it though is also just through team building and having connections. We haven't done it in a while, but we used to do like joint offsites with PM and PMM. Anytime PMM did something, we would always invite our PM counterparts and vice versa. So we were building those connections both like at work and outside of work in meaningful ways. So that's how I've seen it done in the past. But I think in many ways, partnering with product isn't too wildly different. I think like Eric was pointing out, to partnering with some of your other stakeholders, it's about understanding what matters to them and what drives them. our product team is very, like, they own metrics. They're very, like, for their product, they're very metric driven. And so that's often where we partner is, how are we working together to help hit that number? So it's just finding out what motivates them and trying to show how your work and how your efforts can align to that. But I'm curious for folks who have CPOs with super great relationships. I could take some advice on how to build a relationship with a new person coming on board.
I agree with you. There's no like silver bullet, but one thing that came to mind as you were sharing that I would add on top of what you already rightly identified is, I think you can move the needle when you come to the table with valuable insights. And where we started, we've got a great competitive intelligence team, and they align to kind of the planning process that the product organization goes through. And before some of those big planning sessions get underway, they do an update on win-loss information and the latest competitive intelligence. And that, I think, when I think back to kind of what product marketing looked like 4 years ago, I thought that was like a really foundational, fundamental way to start to show the strategic role that enablement could play. Kat, we also benefited from the fact that we moved into the product organization for a hot minute. So I reported to the CPO for about 18 months. And I will say, I know most of you on this call can't control organizational structure, but before that happened, I would have said, oh, I don't think product marketing should report into product. And now I kind of feel good about the idea of it being a pendulum, where it's like, mostly it sits in marketing, but for 2 years it goes and sits in product. Yeah.
No,
it's not bad.
No, and it was actually, like when I first took this job, I was like, oh, it's under marketing. I don't know how it was almost like and part of it is when you're under product, you're also under R&D. So resourcing looks different, like there's just, it's a very different vibe. But yes, I agree. It can fit well in both places. That's fair. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yep.
Great point. Real quick, last question. We've talked a fair amount about some of the kind of soft skills, but there's a question from one of the attendees around hard skills and differentiating themselves in the job market or from other candidates based off hard skills, like, right, the requirements of the job. So curious how you think about this. Eric, I'll defer to you. Curious how you think about this and how maybe somebody can differentiate just based off those kind of job requirements or hard skills.
Yeah, I think we've been talking mostly about like how do you stand out, right? Which is soft skills to me. How are you different? I think the hard skills, depending on the role, are super important. It's just hard to answer that question like more broadly. What I definitely advise people to, and this sounds like a question from somebody who's trying to break into product marketing, which is a conversation I feel like I have quite a bit because thankfully it's a fun place to be, and a lot of people want to figure out how to make it into PMM. I think from a hard skill perspective, I usually advise people to look at kind of their background and how it fits into those hard skills and lean harder into the area they think they can impact. Because the reality is most PMM roles, especially if they are, more junior in nature, are going to be pointed towards a specific part of product marketing, right? So I might be hiring somebody who's specifically, focused on go-to-market and field readiness and that sort of thing. And so bringing in somebody who really understands that, that's where I've brought in people from sales and people from solutions engineering, and those types of roles really work well. And the conversation is, I think, as a candidate, should be pretty candid around that. Here's what I can bring, and here's what I'm looking to learn. Another example is, people that are sort of have content backgrounds or writers or that sort of background. I can help to craft like really strong messaging for you. I can do, talk tracks. I can do your decks, blah, 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 but I really want to learn the business, So like, I think just some honesty and candor around your strengths and how you see them laddering up to the PML skill set, and then the rest of the part that you want to grow into. Because, like I said, most PMM roles, unless you're at a smaller company, are a bit specialized, and the organizations are looking for a certain part of impact. And so, how can your skill set tie to that? I think from a hard skill perspective, it's unreasonable to expect that somebody who hasn't done PMM before is going to have the broad set of skills. We all, I think most people get into product marketing from a different place, right? And so, leaning into your strengths, being candid about the things you don't know yet, I think is a really, I don't know, that's a warm conversation for me to receive versus people trying to pretend they have a broad range of skills, because they think they need to show that.
Yeah, completely agree. It really tees up for hopefully a great path forward with that manager or that individual as well. So that's really great perspective. Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Kat and Eve as well. Really appreciate all of your expertise and knowledge and wisdom, I should say, sharing your wisdom with us as product marketers. Hopefully everyone found it helpful. And with that being said, I'll turn it back over to Alex for a few more announcements.